Okay, good morning everyone and thank you for joining this webinar today. My name is Tori and I'm the Marketing Officer at Connecting Up. Our webinar today will be presented by Matt Walton, who is a Senior ICT Advisor at InfoExchange. If you have any questions, please type them in the question box on your webinar panel and Matt will work through them about halfway through the slides. This webinar is being recorded, so after the webinar you'll be sent a link with the slides. I'll now hand it over to Matt.
Hi everyone, my name is Matt Walton from InfoExchange, as Tori said. So InfoExchange are a not-for-profit who also help other not-for-profits with their technology, and a lot of not-for-profits nowadays are interested in Office 365. So that's one of the drivers behind these webinar series. So I'm excited today to have you all here to discuss Office 365. So I know for many of you, investigating Office 365 is probably just one of a long list of priorities and probably not near the top, but we have seen that Office 365 can really help that priority list and really successfully allow you to focus your time on doing what's most important, and that's achieving the mission of your organisation. So hopefully today we can help you along the path of discovering whether Office 365 is suitable for your organisation. So, as Tori said, feel free to submit any questions throughout the webinar and we'll answer them as we go sort of halfway through and at the end. And obviously feel free to contact me afterwards and we can obviously go through that in more detail. Alright, so what we were planning on covering today we'll touch on the importance of ICT for not-for-profits. We'll go through what is the cloud and some of the features of Office 365. We'll talk about the benefits of Office 365 for your organisation. We'll go through a bit of information about how you can build the business case to help sell this to your CEO and board and help justify the change. I'll give you some implementation tips around if you are going to go ahead with it, how to do that. I'll give you a case study of an organisation that's gone through it and has experienced some of the benefits. And we'll touch on what are the resources and what are the next steps for implementing Office 365 and where you can find some more information. And we'll obviously go through some questions at the end. Okay, so look, obviously the priority behind getting good ICT for a not-for-profit is to really make the most of your staff and volunteer time. We've obviously got limited time on limited money, and having to do, PC reboots and tinker with the servers in the back room is usually not the best use of staff and volunteer time. So these type of things, having good ICT can save you worrying about that on a daily basis. The other important thing is obviously how we measure and improve the client and community outcomes. So having good systems and good data really gives you the information that you need about the service that you're providing and whether that's effective or not and how you can maximise that. The third really important factor is how we minimise risk. Obviously having some of your systems on unsupported servers or systems that aren't working properly, there's a major risk of you losing all that data or of not being able to operate effectively. And they're some of the really important reasons for getting your ICT right and investing a bit of time and effort into actually having a good ICT system. However, we often find that most not-for-profits, they spend too much money on IT and they're often not satisfied with their investment. And IT is one of those things where spending money doesn't always equate to better and more efficient systems. We often see people or organisations buying really expensive systems don't really meet their needs, and they could really get away with doing things a bit more efficiently and effectively. So we work with not-for-profits all day, every day, and working to help them improve their IT. And some of the common challenges that we find is around staying connected with your distributed staff and volunteers. So most organisations have staff and volunteers that want to work away from the main office, so whether that's at home or in the cars, visiting clients out and about in the community. And if they're not doing it now, almost all people that we speak to actually want to do that in the future if they're not currently doing it. So that's one of the real challenges, and a lot of the systems that are in place at the moment don't cater for that type of mobility that a lot of organisations are looking for. The second major challenge often includes having a reliable, cost-effective backup. So it's going back to that last comment on the last slide about risk, and not having an effective backup obviously creates a lot of risk of losing data, and studies have shown that not-for-profits do not always have reliable, robust processes to keep their data, and it enables you to keep operating in the event of a disaster. So, and should the worst happen, either through a natural catastrophe or theft or bad luck, organisations can lose funding, essentially, if you lose your data. And maintaining off-site backups is a discipline that's often hard to juggle. You know, it's putting the time and money into having someone come and collect your backup tapes and putting the time into making sure that's working can be one of those things that often gets forgotten, and that it's not until you have an issue that you realise that your backups aren't working effectively. Obviously, the third one there is funding for ICT. So I've been in the not-for-profit sector a long time. I realise how important, obviously, money is, and ICT is one of the last things you want to choose to spend money on. You'd rather be putting it in programs and services for clients. But what we often find is that often to invest in a system or buy a new server, non-profits are getting grants or getting chunks of money from capital from the board to invest in those systems on an upfront basis, but they're not investing money into managing them on an ongoing basis. So staff are often left with outdated, inefficient software, and infrastructure can become expensive and difficult to support. The fourth one there is access to technical resources. So look, a lot of not-for-profits can't justify employing an IT manager, and even the ones with IT managers, one IT person can't know everything in every system. So we often find that these organisations get left without the resources and the support, and don't want to spend money on expensive consultants or support organisations. So again, what they find is you're left with outdated, inefficient software that hasn't been updated, and the same with hardware. So that moves on to the question of, okay, well, how do we fix all those challenges? And one of the ways we do that is the cloud. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of the cloud, but often we find that people don't really understand what is this cloud thing and where actually is my data and my systems. So hopefully we'll answer some of those questions today. So really what the cloud is, and definitions can vary depending on the types of services, but it's really a method of delivering IT services without having physical servers or hardware on your site. So the service is shared across a large number of users, and it typically offers better value than if a single organisation needed to set up and fund all the infrastructure on your local site. So cloud services can include any IT service really, so email or file sharing, collaboration, CRMs, finance systems, basically anything can be stored in the cloud. And in general, cloud services are highly reliable, so often they have better availability service levels than you'll find from just having a single server on your in your office, because they have inbuilt redundancy. So these servers there's multiple servers, multiple data centers, and it's distributed over multiple sites, so it's rarely down. Usually they're easily expandable, so with a couple of clicks of a button you can add an extra 100 users to a lot of these cloud systems, whereas if you were to do that on a local server, you might need to upgrade your hardware and do a lot more work internally to get that to expand to suit your growing and changing needs. They also have a usage-based pricing, so usually it's per user per month and pay as you go, as opposed to investing thousands of dollars on an upfront capital investment. And the fourth one there is it's usually, not always, accessible over the internet, so you can essentially work from anywhere with an internet connection. And this provides obviously benefits from staff working from home or seeing clients out of the office. So today almost every technology is available in the cloud, and it can be used without significant investments. So it can also be called software as a service. You may have heard that as well. And Office 365 is an example of a cloud application which offers high reliability, ready expandability, usage-based pricing, and can be accessed over the internet. Now, Info Exchange has been working with more than 50 not-for-profits, and that number's probably grown since we did this slide. And there's just a few of them. But in saying that, we also install and support local infrastructure for many clients. So it does depend on what's appropriate, and each organisation is different about what suits their needs. Now, I might just start with defining the differences between Office and Office 365. So this area can be a little bit confusing in terms of the terminology that Microsoft have chosen to use. So desktop software is a software that you usually get on a disk. You or your IT guy install that on your local PC. And as you can see at the top there, it's Office Standard 2013. It's got Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, OneNote. And Office Professional Plus has Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, OneNote, Access, InfoPath, Project, and Link. Now, both of those are available through Connecting Up, so typically you would buy them, and they're reasonably cheap, I think, through Connecting Up Pro Plus $35 at the moment. And that's a once-off purchase that lasts a couple of years. So at the moment, the version is 2013, and these come with software assurance too, so that you can upgrade. Now, so that sits on your PC, on your local bit of hardware. Office 365 is cloud-based. So what that is, it basically sits on the internet, and you can access that from anywhere. Now, that also includes Office Online, which is Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, OneNote. You can actually access and edit Word documents, for example, in any browser. So that's Office Online. Now, I've put the comment there about can be used on any desktop because we typically encourage, and I do this, have Office 2013 on your local PC as well, and you can use it on your local PC, but have access to Office Online when you're out and about if you don't have a laptop to take with you. Now, the other big benefits from Office 365 is it comes with all these what you call server-based applications like SharePoint, Link, Exchange, and OneDrive and Yammer, which sit which typically would have sat on a server in your office. So a lot of you would have Exchange servers in your office or as part of your small business server. So that now comes as part of Office 365. Now, we'll go in a little bit more detail about what comes in Office 365. Now, you notice up the top there I'm talking about the E1 plan. So Office 365, at the moment, you would have seen earlier this year Microsoft announced it was they were offering free licenses to eligible not-for-profits. Now, the license that is free is an E1 plan. So when I'm talking about Office 365 today, I'm typically referring to the E1 plan. There are other plans like the E3 plan, which you can upgrade to and you can purchase for a fee. I think the E3 plan at the moment is $5.80 a month. That has some additional functionality. But today, we're seeing most not-for-profits obviously going for the free plan because it does include most things that you need. So what's included in the E1 plan? So obviously Exchange Online is an important one where you get email and shared calendaring, and that's typically what you use Outlook for. And you get 50 gig a user, which is massive. You shouldn't ever sort of fill 50 gig of a mailbox. That's a lot of emails. So that's one of the most common things that people are wanting to move to Office 365 for, is to use it for email. Link is another important one, which is used for instant messaging, video conferencing. You can have screen sharing and point of presence to know where your colleagues are in the office or out of the office, and it's really a good tool for that sort of collaboration and video conferencing. SharePoint is a big one that we're seeing is very popular and very useful for a lot of not-for-profits, and that's being used essentially as an intranet and as to store and share files and collaborate on work and share information, basically. It enables you to manage the documents so that you don't have multiple versions of the same document sitting on hard drives. Essentially, it's one spot on the cloud where you store your documents, and everyone logs in from wherever they want to log in from and edits the documents up online. OneDrive is another area of document management, which you, and we'll touch on this next, around you can use for offline synchronizing SharePoint and personal document storage. Yammer's another one that's interesting. It's essentially Facebook for business. It's a collaboration tool that a lot of organizations are starting to use. And the note down the bottom, as I mentioned before, we still recommend that organizations buy their desktop Office 2013, Pro Plus typically we recommend, from Connecting Up. All right. So look, Office 365 has a heap of benefits and features, and we would need more than our webinar to go through all of it, but some of my favourites are really around staff working efficiently and staying connected anywhere. So really, information's available from anywhere on pretty much any device. Video conferencing is another big one that it just allows people to connect and have that face-to-face contact from remote areas. And a lot of organisations now are working from multiple locations and mobile staff, and we're just finding video conferencing to be very effective. SharePoint for file storage and collaborative document editing. So, you know, when you're working on single documents, having multiple people working together on a grant application or a tender response or a policy, we're finding that is working really well on SharePoint. And the other points around organisations just getting on with their jobs and not having to worry about things like server upgrades, backups, and as I touched on before, scalability. You can just add new users without much effort. And having the file storage, having a terabyte of storage for OneDrive plus SharePoint is just a massive amount of data that you now have access to, which previously you would have had to buy additional drives or additional storage for your server. Availability is the other key one, where 99.9% guarantee from Microsoft, and the last 3 months have been even better than that, so 99.98. So really what we're saying is it's going to be up and running, and you're always going to have access, whereas we've found in the past local servers are obviously a lot less reliable than that. All right, now we've touched on this already, but I just wanted to elaborate on the file storage. It can be a little bit confusing. So you can store documents in either OneDrive for Business or SharePoint Online. Now, what we've been using it as an easy way to differentiate is typically we store documents in OneDrive when they're personal and they're for an individual. So on my daily basis, for example, if I'm just working on a proposal or I'm just working on a document for myself, I store it in OneDrive. And that means I can access it offline if I want to take my laptop on the train or take it home without an internet connection. I can work on that, and that synchronizes as soon as I plug back in. But if I want to work on documents with my team, so we're building a policy or doing a proposal that I want other people to get involved with and edit, I put all my information on our company intranet, which is SharePoint Online. So typically that's how we're differentiating, to say, look, if you want to share it with multiple people, it's on your SharePoint environment. OneDrive for Business is for your own purposes. In saying that, you synchronize SharePoint to your desktop with OneDrive. So look, we can explore this a bit further, and there's some documentation and resources at the end of the presentation if this is still a little bit confusing. All right, now one of the big sort of questions and concerns that we get asked about a lot is about privacy and security. So this big cloud thing can be a little bit daunting if you're not really sure how it works and what's stored and where. And look, it is an important decision. So evaluating the suitability of Office 365 is something that you as an organisation and as an IT person or as a CEO needs to decide and consider. So look, the cloud does offer significant benefits, but it's not right for everyone and for every bit of information. So you really need to weigh up the benefits versus the risks, and you also need to consider compliance with your local regulations. So I know we've got some people from New Zealand on the call and some, obviously people from Australia. There are different privacy regulations in different countries, and there are a range of different reasons why you would or wouldn't store information on Office 365, and we'll touch on those now. But for more information, there is an Office 365 Trust Centre, which has a lot of resources, and it's a great tool if you want to really delve into this in a bit more detail and understand what Microsoft are doing to protect your data and make sure that there is privacy and security. So some of the questions that you should really ask yourself before sort of jumping on to Office 365 and working out whether it's appropriate for your information, for your organisation, is look, how sensitive is the data that you're considering storing on Office 365? So every organisation is different. We're working with sporting clubs and organisations that store health and clinical data around clients, and everyone answers it a little bit differently. And often organisations have multiple systems to store data. So typically organisations also have a client management system or CRM, which is stored on site, which could store all your client data, which is different from what you would store on your emails or on SharePoint. The other key question is what jurisdiction you operate in, and whether they have any requirements, and whether the funding bodies that are funding you have any requirements about where you store your data. So we've seen some health organisations have some clauses in their funding sort of contracts that said they need to store data in Australia, but that's not typical. So that's just something you need to look for. But one of the most important things is, what are you currently doing today, and how does the Office 365 security compare? So we walk into some organisations and talk to them about their security, and they have a lot of concerns about Office 365. But then when we walk into their office, there's the server sitting in under a desk with no locked door, and anyone could go in and walk into the office, pick up the server and walk out the door and do whatever they want with it. So it's really that putting it in perspective and looking at comparing it to what you're doing now, and also around things like, where are your backups living, what are your password protocols, things like a lot of organisations just share their passwords and don't have a lot of strong security at the moment. So that's an important factor to consider. In saying that, I'm not trying to scare you too much, but it's just things that you need to consider. But we're working with a lot of organisations, both large and small, that have made the decision. They've done their analysis, and for their organisation, they have decided to store their information in the cloud, so Office 365. For example, the Queensland Government, including the police force up there, and Info Exchange, are all storing their information in Office 365. So we have that there now. And I will say that Microsoft have a lot of, they're accredited with security standards, and they have a lot of things in place, and they have a reputation of being a lot better than some of the other providers as well. So as I mentioned before, there's some links in there to the Trust Centre if you want to get some more information about that, and obviously I can talk to you separately offline about that as well. Now, we might pause there for questions. So I see there's a couple coming through on the message, so might just have a little break and throw it to Tori to read out any questions.
Thanks, Matt. Toby's got a couple of questions. He just wants to clarify, you must be online to use Office 365. It can't be used offline?
There are some components, thanks for the question, Toby, some components can be used offline. So as I mentioned, things like OneDrive, if you have Outlook on your PC, basically you can use those when offline, but for Outlook, for example, you're obviously not going to send or receive any mail when you're offline, but when you plug back in, all your mail will be downloaded, and then you can disconnect from the internet and take your Outlook and your OneDrive for your documents, Outlook for your emails and calendars and those sort of things, and you can work offline on those offline copies, and then it synchronizes when you get back to the office or you plug back into the internet.
Thanks, Matt. And just another question from Toby. What sort of bandwidth is recommended if you're traveling using mobile as a modem? Is that adequate?
Yeah, look, bandwidth, and we will touch on bandwidth later actually, and I've even got an appendice to this slide deck in the PowerPoint presentation. There's an appendice at the end, which I believe you'll get sent this PowerPoint presentation, and it gives some scenarios around the bandwidth, around what might be suitable, but it really does depend on what you're using in the bandwidth. So, for example, if you're just sending and receiving emails, it doesn't take up that much bandwidth, and it doesn't really matter if it's a bit slow, because if an email takes an extra 30 seconds to come through, you probably won't notice. However, if you're running a video conference for 10 people, then you will notice if you have poor bandwidth, and Likewise, if you're trying to synchronize a lot of data up and down with OneDrive, because you're wanting to take your OneDrive offline, that can put a big bit of pressure on your bandwidth. So, look, we've worked with some organisations who are on ADSL2 in their office with 10 people, and it's working fine. But trying to run a video conference tethering off your mobile in a regional area is probably not a good idea. We have other organisations who are really seeing the benefits of upgrading to fibre or Ethernet or SHDSL if possible, but particularly with larger groups of staff, and if they have other applications as well. So yeah, the bandwidth question is there's not a finite answer of yes, you can use ADSL or no, you can't. There are a lot of variables to that.
Thanks, Matt. That's all for now.
All right, any other questions? And as I said, we can move on at the end as well.
No more questions at the moment, but I'm sure there'll be some at the end.
Okay, great. All right, so the next slide is about building the business case. Now, look, this is probably one of the most important first steps down the path to Office 365, and it's something that I'm assuming most of you will need to do to help get, if you decide to go with Office 365, you will need to get support from your board, your CEO, and your other staff. And a business case is something that helps you do that. And these are some of the reasons that we've seen people moving and how they can help justify moving, and some of the drivers for people to move to Office 365. So the first one really is around reducing or eliminating server upgrades and refreshes and saving that ongoing support and server costs. So look, we often get calls from not-for-profits saying, my server's about to die, I don't want to go off and spend thousands of dollars replacing it. What can we do? And Office 365 is usually a good answer for that. So we find that is the money you save on replacing a server or managing it on an ongoing basis, even renewing your warranty, can be used in better places and invested. The second one is using video conferencing and allowing people to work from home and off-site. Even we've had organisations who have really, the money they saved in airfares more than well and truly paid for moving to Office 365, and then they had money left over to do other things. So they're really saving money by reducing those travel costs. The third one is really protecting your data from hardware failure. So I see this one as being able to sleep at night. As a CEO and previously been a CEO of a not-for-profit, I'd often worry about, what if that server fails and I lose everything, or what if someone hacks, or there's privacy, or theft, or the server room floods. So just having that peace of mind that you're really defended against a lot of those issues is enough for people to go, okay, let's just move it off-site, let's get it into Office 365. The fourth one is around collaboration. So really just allowing people from multiple locations to communicate effectively. So that's using SharePoint or Link or Yammer. There's lots of different ways to do it, but we've found it really does bring a lot of benefit to your organisation, having that collaboration. And having a single source of truth. I'm sure all of you have had some issues in the past with trying to find where files are, trying to make sure you've got the right version, having two people work on a document at the same time, and then trying to merge them together and work out which one's the final version is often an issue, and in SharePoint and OneDrive that's a lot simpler because there's really one spot where each document lives and you just edit it there. Alright, so 12 tips for successful implementation. So as we said, we're doing a lot of these implementations of Office 365 for not-for-profits, and this is our list of 12 things that are important to think about and to do if you're trying to implement this. Obviously there's a lot more, but these are 12 of our most popular ones. So, first one is to keep in mind, you can stage using Office 365, or you can just use bits of it. So you don't have to have the whole package. You don't have to move all on one weekend. You know, so you just do the bits that are important to you first. So I've got a lot of organisations just wanting to get rid of their Exchange servers. They don't want to have their email on site. So they just do Exchange, and Link often is a good one for video conferencing at the same time, and then they can worry about SharePoint and documents later because they're happy with they're using their server for the short term. So it's something to keep in mind. Second one is explaining the benefits to staff and really engaging them to do that. We've seen many examples where the IT team or the management team have just said, this is what we're doing and here you go, start using it. And we found it works a lot better if you can engage some local champions, really help them sort of engage with all levels of staff and have the local champions be the ones that promote it across the organisation. The third one, and I think Tom mentioned it before, ensure your bandwidth and reliability is suitable. So yeah, if you've got a really poor ADSL connection, can really consider upgrading that if you're planning on doing things like video conferencing and OneDrive. The fourth one there is making effective use of OneDrive desktop. So everyone, you know, you always have people wanting to work offline, or you know, your internet might go down one day. It's important to have that offline capability and using that OneDrive effectively. One of the important things that we've been recommending to almost everyone who moves to Office 365 is consider upgrading your Office, which Office 2013, as I mentioned before, available from Connecting Up for only $35 or something like that. We found that these newer pieces of software from Microsoft, they're really designed to work hand in hand with Office 365. So we've found that it comes with a lot of benefits by upgrading that first or at the same time on your PCs, as opposed to trying to use Office 2007 or Office 2010, which are not integrated as well. Last one on this slide is use an Office 365 expert to make it a success. We have seen several not-for-profits try and do it themselves, and while there are bits you can do yourself, definitely, there are points in the migration that you need someone really pretty technical that's had some experience with Office 365. So again, there's a growing number of people out there that can help you, even though Office 365 is a new product. It is important to engage someone and get some help if you can. All right, the number 7 there, considering local storage if you're sharing large videos and quantities. So look, obviously Office 365 is on the internet, it is in the cloud, and everything you put up there does use bandwidth, and large things like videos can slow these down. So it can be worth having a local storage device. You know, you can buy a NAS, which is a type of storage device that you can store locally, or some people want to keep their servers for some local storage. but that's something to consider if you have a lot of large videos and files that you don't want to be sending up and down across your internet connection. Security controls and policies. We have talked a bit about security and privacy, but things in your local environment, things like not sharing passwords and trying not to use generic accounts that 15 people all access. There's a few things that you can do for security that it's a good opportunity to just tidy up some of those gaps in your security and privacy. Active Directory is basically your local list of all your users, and for some large organisations, so for organisations with over 50 users, for example, there is tools that you can use that synchronise your Active Directory with Office 365 so that people have the same username and password for both. Now it's a bit of work to set that up, so it's not suitable for all organisations, but often for the larger ones we recommend that sort of Active Directory synchronisation that can offer some value and save a bit of time. Now number 10 is the headsets. We often find people trying to use link video conferencing, but they're sitting in an open plan office on their speaker and microphone on their laptop, and they don't have a great experience. So there's some little things like headsets and webcams that you can do that just really make that experience a bit better. And number 11, online collaboration spaces are great for groups like your board or volunteers or teams within your organisation. We're seeing a lot of boards setting up little SharePoint sites to store their minutes and agendas and task lists and those type of things. So that's, yeah, for collaboration, particularly for people that aren't working in the same office all day, every day, is quite valuable. And the last tip for the successful implementation is Yammer. I've mentioned Yammer before, but it's essentially a social media, Facebook-style tool that businesses can use for collaboration and communication, particularly for larger organisations. So, you know, we use it here in our office just for things like, okay, this is new policy, or this is new person started in the office, or someone's birthday, we're having cake, you know, those type of things, and it can be used differently for each organisation, but we've found that can work well as well. All right, I might quickly pause again for questions. Tori, if anyone's got any questions before we move on.
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions. Mark asks, after purchasing Office 365, is there any tutorials that you can recommend on how to set up and use all of the functions?
Yeah, Microsoft is getting better at doing tutorials. So after this, what I can do, I can send you a link to some of the Microsoft tools. Look, it really does depend on what you're referring to. So there's obviously administrator training, which is how to set up SharePoint sites and those type of things, or there's just the basic user training, which is how to use Outlook and how to get mail. So there are some training tools that Microsoft has developed in both. And yeah, I can touch base with the group after this and send a link to a couple of different ones.
Now Amy asks, can I have Office 365 on a work laptop to use myself when out of the office without any other person needing to be involved, or have it also? She's mainly interested in OneDrive and Outlook usage.
Yeah, Office 365, now we've been referring today to the E1 plan, which is free for not-for-profit. So obviously as an organisation you need to be deemed eligible and you need to essentially use that licence for work purposes. However, you can use use it obviously at home as well. That's a decision that you can make. So yes, you could register your organisation and use that for sort of professional purposes, but use it for personal as well. However, the Office 365 has a range of plans as well. You can buy small business plans, you can buy personal plans, you can buy corporate plans. So if it's purely just you want to use it for your own purposes, there are a lot of plans out there that you can just buy for yourself.
Great. Mark asks, how would we go about moving from Office 365 Small Business to Office 365 E3?
Yeah, look, there are some, and by Office 365 Small Business, I assume you mean with Telstra. So historically, Telstra have hosted Office 365. Now the free E1 plans are actually hosted by Microsoft. So they're essentially a separate environment, and it is a sort of a manual process of moving that data from the small business plan, closing that account, and moving it to the new E1 or E3 plans with Microsoft. So to set up your new E3, you could register for a trial and just set that up separately, but then it is a matter of migration from your small business to E3, and that is where we would recommend you get some external help with that, and touch on it a little bit later, but there are some things that we can do to help in readiness assessments and engaging people to help you move across, because it's not a totally simple process, unfortunately.
Toby asks, does it allow more than one person to edit the same document at once?
Yes, SharePoint has a feature that they call co-authoring, and I really like this feature. So I'm referring to Word documents at the moment. You can do it in PowerPoint as well. Basically, what it does, you can have more than one, and as you're editing, it's obviously online, and as you save each edit that you make, it synchronizes that with online, and it blocks out essentially the paragraphs that you're editing. It blocks those out so no one else can edit them, but you can see what other people are doing. So if a colleague and I are working on the same page, I will see his name there and which paragraph he's working on, and then when we save, it refreshes and the updates are made, and you can track those changes as well. So yes, that is a really good tool that we use a lot for proposals and grant applications and those type of things. So yeah, I really like that feature.
Mark asks, with OneDrive, are sync issues common? They have Dropbox, Ignite, and own cloud desktop client, and the amount of issues that they are presented with makes it unusable.
Yes, you can encounter sync issues, and we do see that occasionally, and sync issues are usually caused by your dropouts of internet and those sort of things. So often it is other underlying problems which are causing the sync issues. So often if you resolve those underlying problems, it does help the sync issues. OneDrive has a tool that repairs sync issues, and you can definitely resolve them. So while yes, I acknowledge that there can be sync issues, they can be resolved reasonably easily often, but it is something to keep in mind as you're working, and make sure you resolve them. The worst issues that we find are when people don't resolve them quickly and straight away, and then 2 weeks later they realise there's been a sync issue, and the document versioning has caused errors. But that's only with OneDrive syncing to a local copy. So the sync issues, if you're editing directly into SharePoint, like we talked about with co-authoring, that doesn't encounter the sync issues. It's only when you've got people with laptops that are taking them home and syncing offline that you have issues. So.
We've got a few more questions, but I'll ask just this last one and then we can leave the rest to the end. Toby asks, any major limitations in the Mac version? Their organisation has all Macs.
Yeah, there are a couple of different things you can do with Mac. Obviously, there is Office that you can buy, and I assume you're referring to you buy Office 2011 for Mac and install that on each PC. And while the functionality isn't quite as good, we have seen several organisations work that well. So while there are, I would say, minor limitations, I wouldn't say there are major limitations. We have other organisations who just use, you can use the Mac mail function, so not even use Office for Mac. You can just configure your mail in your Mac email for email and use SharePoint in a web browser, and even use Word Online and Excel Online on a web browser as well. So some people choose to do that. So while there are minor limitations and it obviously doesn't integrate as well as having a Microsoft Office, it can still work, definitely.
Thanks for that, Matt. We've got a couple more questions, but we'll just leave them to the end.
Okay. Thanks, Tori. Look, I was going to talk about a case study, but I'm conscious that we've only got 7 minutes left, and if there are quite a few questions, our time might be better spent resolving those questions than going through this. Look, you will obviously get all these slides and we can send this out afterwards. I'm obviously also happy to answer questions down the track after this offline with you directly. There's a few of you asking some of the same questions, so I might happy to engage with you separately and answer some of those over the phone. All right, but yeah, this is just one example. I'll just quickly skim through this. One example of an organisation. Really what they did is they just lowered their risk. They were having some sort of major server issues, and they really wanted to have some reliable infrastructure for staff that were distributed across the country. So they really reduced that, and they found their time saving was up to 15% from travel and accessibility. And the staff were actually happier and more supported, and they weren't encountered with a lot of those issues that they used to have with their server. So I might skim across that, but and move on to some other resources. So really this is, and this maybe answers some of the questions, but this is a slide where you can go for more information. So there's Microsoft 365 for not-for-profits. So this is where you go to get more information. And you can also register for the trial here. The E1 versus E3 plan is the other, the second link down there, which is important. Some people are considering the E3 plan, which is the paid $5.80 a month plan versus the free one. So there are a couple of extra features, but what we're seeing is a lot of people going the E1 first, and then you can always upgrade either some users or all users to E3 later if you need that extra functionality. The privacy principles. So again, there are, we touched on privacy before. Here's some information about what the government are saying is the privacy principles, and this will give you a bit of an idea around where to get more information to see if you're meeting these principles, and the same for New Zealand. The Trust Centre is the one that is where you go for all the privacy and security information. It also says the uptime information, so that's where you get the information about, it's 99.98% this month. And Improve IT is this isn't specific to Office 365, but it's general resources that help your organisation get the most from technology. So a lot of general technology questions are now going on improveit.org. All right. Now these ones here, and I touched on this readiness assessment before, but for those of you who want additional support and you want more information, these are a couple of things that are available to you. Now, Connecting Up are obviously selling through the Connecting Up site, and TechSoup for those in New Zealand. They're selling readiness assessments, which InfoExchange deliver, and I'll probably be the one that delivers those for you, where you essentially provide some information about your environment, and we will come back to you with a report with some recommendations around, look, this is whether we think Office 365 is suitable for you, this is how you could do it, and this is, if you want us to help, this is how we would go about it. So that's often a good step, good sort of cheap and easy, quick step to get that information from an expert on how you would move to Office 365. Happy to, again, answer questions about those readiness assessments. The other thing we're starting to do, and we've just launched a pilot that we'll be running in the next month, is DIY workshops. So for some organisations, and typically small organisations with basic requirements, and staff that are reasonably tech savvy, you may be able to do it yourself. And these workshops are to help you learn how to do an Office 365 migration. So that's another one that I'm happy to answer some questions about. Connecting Up have a range of other webinars as well. I believe in October we'll be running one around a demonstration, a really practical, this is what Office 365 looks like, and this is what SharePoint looks like in OneDrive. So I suppose keep up to date with the Connecting Up webinars and register for those. We can provide implementation and migration advice as well, so InfoExchange can do the migration for you, or we're working with a lot of organisations, particularly larger organisations, where we're just providing some advice and they're doing it themselves. And we can do configuration and development for applications like SharePoint. All right. So, sorry I've taken up some time there. Now, I'll throw open to questions, but really it's about sharing information, working efficiently, reducing your costs, telework and working mobile, and improving your disaster readiness. So, look, I know we're running a bit late. We don't have a lot of time, but I'm happy to stay on the line for as long as you want to answer some questions, or as I said, my contact details are down the bottom there. Anyone can contact me anytime, and we can go from there. All right, Tori, any questions?
Yes, we've got a few questions. Kevin asks, does the E1 plan include SharePoint?
It does, yes, definitely. So the E1 plan basically includes everything. The E3 plan just has a couple of extra ones, a couple of extra features. So E3 actually includes a desktop version of Office, so it saves you buying Office 2013 separately, but we often find that it's more cost efficient to get the E1 and buy it from Connecting Up. The E3 also has some mobile apps that give you extra functionality on tablets and phones. It also has some data retention and archiving tools that are better with the E3 plan. But typically, yeah, the E1 we're finding does cover everything for most not-for-profits.
Amy is referring back to her previous question. Now, she asked, she wants to use her laptop at home. It's not actually for personal use. It's just that she's the only one in the office who works out of the office. So would it be a hard sell to the board if everyone has to use it?
No, I don't think so, and I think it's going back to that business case slide around selling it to the board. With by everyone has to use it. In the office, they can all still use Outlook on and Office on their PCs, but if you're moving your email, everyone, and you're all on the same email address, so at infoexchange.org.au, for example, everyone on that domain name needs to move their email to Office 365. So you can't have a couple of people in the office using infoexchange.org.au on your old Exchange server and a couple on infoexchange.org.au on Office 365. So in that sense, it's your whole organisation can move across, but they could keep working on their PCs on Outlook and probably not know the difference for email. I hope that answers your question, Amy, but look, if you want to drill into your specific scenario a bit more, I can, again, talk offline.
Amy says, thank you, good to know. Kevin asks, can OneDrive folders be shared with other users?
Look, they can. And there is a functionality in OneDrive to share individual documents and folders. However, what we've found is SharePoint actually works a lot better at that sharing with broad, with your whole organisation or large groups or segments of your organisation, and is typically more effective than OneDrive, because with OneDrive, all the documents in OneDrive are specific to your individual. So if that individual leaves, those documents are, stay in that individual's OneDrive. So if you delete that account, all those documents are gone. Whereas SharePoint is more an organizational document storage area, and if you store things in SharePoint, it will stay there as long as you have a SharePoint environment. So that's one of the reasons why we typically recommend, when you're sharing large quantities of documents with large groups, to put them in SharePoint. But in OneDrive, you can share. So, for example, when I work on a proposal, maybe with just one other individual, I work on it in my OneDrive and share it with him. But then when the proposal's finished, I upload it into SharePoint.
Thanks, Matt. Kevin asks, does Info Exchange do much work with not-for-profits in Western Australia?
Yes, we work with not-for-profits all over the country, and what we're finding with Office 365, as we mentioned, a lot of this can be done remotely. So obviously it's cloud-based, so we're working with organisations around the world, so New Zealand and WA and Queensland, and to help them with these migrations. And obviously there's some things that you need someone on site for, but and we can travel as well. We actually have some staff members in Perth, but they're probably not our Office 365 experts. But so yes, is the answer. We can work with organisations in anywhere in Australia and New Zealand.
Rick asks, if you're using Outlook 365 and have large PST files, is there a significant bandwidth issue keeping them synchronized?
So typically what you would do, if you've got, let's say you've got Outlook stored locally on your PC, Outlook 2013, and you're using Office 365 for email, what you would do is you would actually upload your PST file to Office 365, and then it would be just part of that mailbox in Office 365, and you could view that as an archive in Outlook. I hope that makes sense. But so there are a few different ways to handle PST files, but typically you wouldn't be synchronizing PST files. You would either keep some locally and only access them through your Outlook, or upload them to Office 365 and access them just as you would any other mail in Office 365, either online or through your Outlook.
Thanks, Matt. That's all the questions we have for now. If you have anything else you'd like to say or like to go over, let me know. Other than that, there are no questions at the moment.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Look, I won't hold you up. I'm conscious we've already gone 5 minutes over, so I appreciate everyone's time. And look, I see this just as a start of your journey. So, look, while Office 365 is reasonably easy and a really pretty user-friendly tool, there are some things to think about and a bit of a process to get that up and running. So, again, let me know if we can help, and if you require any other information. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Matt, and thank you everyone else for participating today. As I said before, we'll be sending out an email with the presentation and slides, but that brings us obviously to the end of the webinar, so thank you everyone and have a lovely day.
Thanks, Tori.